This teacup sold for $4,999. It is not gold. It is not jeweled. It is a floral bone china cup with a gilt rim, the kind that sits behind glass in 10 million homes and gets used twice a year at Christmas. The woman who owned it had inherited it from her mother, kept it in a cabinet for 31 years, and had it priced at $8 in a box she was preparing to take to a charity shop. A dealer walked past that box, turned the cup over, looked at the bottom for about 4 seconds, and offered her $40 on the spot. She took it. He sold it 11 months later for just under $5,000. And here is the part that should make you get up and open your own cabinet. That cup is not number 1 on this list. It is number 2. Over the next 20 minutes, I am going to show you 20 old teacups that look completely ordinary and have sold for real money at real auctions. Some of them are worth $80, some of them are worth thousands. Almost all of them are sitting in cabinets right now, owned by people who have never once turned them over to look at the bottom. Because that is the whole thing. Nearly every teacup on this list is identified by a mark on the base, a signature hidden inside the painting, or a detail so small that you would need someone to point it out. Nobody points it out. So the cups get donated, they get boxed up after a funeral, they get sold for $2 at a yard sale, and somebody else makes the money. Let us fix that. We are counting down from number 20. Number 20, Royal Albert. And specifically, not the pattern you are thinking of. If you own Royal Albert, there is a very good chance you own Old Country roses. Pink roses, gold rim, extremely recognizable. And I have to be honest with you about it. Old Country roses is worth almost nothing. It was introduced in 1962 and produced continuously for more than 60 years. Over 150 million pieces were made. There is no scarcity anywhere in that pattern, and a cup and saucer today typically brings $10 to $20. But Royal Albert made hundreds of patterns, and the short-run discontinued ones are a completely different market. Lady Carlisle, Petite Point Blossom Time, the Provincial Flowers series. These were made for a handful of years, sold modestly, and disappeared, and a complete trio in good condition now sits comfortably in the $60 to $150 range. The butterfly handle shapes, where the handle is molded into an actual butterfly with open wings, trade higher again. Here is your first thing to check. Turn the cup over. If the back stamp says Bone China, England, you are looking at a piece made before about 1970. If it says Made in England, it is later. Earlier is almost always worth more, and that is going to hold true for nearly every item on this list. Number 19. Aynsley Orchard Fruit. Aynsley is one of the great Staffordshire bone china makers, and orchard fruit is their signature pattern. Peaches, plums, grapes, and blackberries painted against a mossy background, usually with a heavily gilded interior. It is beautiful, it is instantly recognizable, and a standard example of it is worth about $50 to $75. I want you to remember that number, $50 to $75. Write it down if you have to, because we are coming back to Aynsley Orchard Fruit later in this video, and when we do, the number is going to be almost 80 times higher. Same maker, same pattern name, same fruit. One tiny difference that almost nobody checks. I will tell you what that difference is at number 2. Number 18, Limoges cups with no mark at all. This one goes against everything you think you know. When most people turn a cup over and find nothing, no maker, no country, no pattern number, they assume it is worthless factory wear. And most of the time they are right. But there is one important exception, and it is French. Limoges was never a single company. It was a region in central France where dozens of porcelain works produced blank whiteware, which was then shipped out and decorated by separate studios, often in other countries entirely. Those decorating studios frequently never mark the finished piece. So you end up with genuinely fine French porcelain, hand-gilded, carrying no identification whatsoever. An unmarked cup of exactly this type, decorated with 24-karat gold and in flawless condition, sold at auction for close to $230. Not life-changing, but $230 for something most people would put in the charity box without a second glance. One warning on this one: giltware destroys the value faster here than on anything else in this video. If the gold has rubbed down to a dull gray where fingers held the handle, you are losing 70% of the price. Do not polish it. Polishing makes it worse. Number 17. Chintz. Chintz is the all-over floral pattern that covers the entire surface of the cup like wallpaper, with no white space left anywhere. Royal Winton made the best of it. Lord Nelson made a great deal of it, and for about 40 years everybody hated it. It was considered fussy, old-fashioned, the sort of thing your grandmother had and you would never want. That has reversed. Chintz is one of the few categories in English ceramics where collector demand is currently going up rather than down, and a good Royal Winton trio in a sought-after pattern now brings between $150 and $400. Look for the names Julia, Welbeck, Florence, and Sweet Pea. And check the inside of the cup, because if the chintz pattern continues on the interior as well as the exterior, that roughly doubles the value. There is a trap here you need to know about. Royal Winton reissued several chintz patterns in the 1990s, and to an untrained eye they look nearly identical to the originals. The reissues carry a date in the back stamp. The originals do not. If you see a year printed on the bottom, you have the reissue, and it is worth a fraction. Number 16. Occupied Japan. This is the easiest one on the entire list, because the value is not in the pattern, the maker, or the painting. It is in two words on the base. Between 1947 and 1952, anything exported from Japan to the United States was legally required to be marked Occupied Japan. That is a 5-year window, and then it closed forever. So the mark itself is a hard date stamp on a very short production period, and collectors will pay $80 to $200 for a good cup and saucer that carries it. The mark has to actually say Occupied Japan or Made in Occupied Japan. If it just says Japan or Nippon, that is a different period, and there is no premium. Go and check right now. Genuinely, pause this and go look, because this one takes 10 seconds and a surprising number of people find it. And while you are up, do me a favor, come back and tell me in the comments which number on this list you actually own. I read every single one of them and I answer them, and it helps me work out which makers to cover next. Number 15. Hammersley and Tuscan. These are the forgotten Staffordshire makers, and that is precisely why they are undervalued. They produced bone china of the same quality as Aynsley and Paragon, out of the same part of England, in the same decades. But neither name carries anything like the same recognition today, so their cups sit in cabinets completely unnoticed and get sold at general lot prices. Hammersley was absorbed into Spode. Tuscan was absorbed into Wedgwood. In both cases, production under the original name simply stopped, which permanently capped the supply. A good Hammersley Victorian Violets trio or a decent Tuscan piece will bring $100 to $250 from someone who knows what it is. Number 14. Belleek, and it is entirely about the color of the mark. Belleek is Irish Parian china, and the first thing anybody notices about it is how thin it is. Hold a genuine Belleek cup up to a window and you can see the light coming through the body. It is astonishing work. Now, Belleek is still in production today, and modern pieces are ordinary retail china. So the entire question is which period yours came from, and the mark answers it in one glance. The first black period, 1863 to 1890, is the mark that carries real money. The second black period, 1891 to 1926, is still strong. If the mark is green, you are looking at 1946 or later, and the value drops away sharply. A first or second black period cup in one of the shell shapes, Neptune, Tridacna, Echinus, or Limpet, sits in the $300 to $700 range. Number 13. Jeweled cups by Coalport and Minton. These are cups where the decorator applied raised beads of enamel over the gilding, one at a time, by hand, to imitate set gemstones. Turquoise beads, or white ones, standing proud of the surface in perfect rows. It is one of the most labor-intensive decorating techniques ever used on English porcelain, and it was abandoned for exactly that reason. It costs too much to make. There is a very simple test. Run a fingernail lightly across the beads. On a genuine jeweled piece, you will feel every one of them because they are physically raised. On a printed imitation, the surface is completely flat. A good jeweled Coalport or Minton cup and saucer sits between $400 and $900. And be aware that missing jewels are the standard defect on these, and auction houses deduct for them individually, so count them against the pattern before you get excited. Number 12. Shelley, in the dainty shape. Dainty is probably the single most collected shape in all of English bone china. 6 fluted panels running down the body, a scalloped rim, and a handle that curls in a way no other maker copied properly. Once you have seen one, you will recognize it forever. Plain white dainty is common and cheap. The colored and patterned versions are not. And this is where it gets interesting because Shelley results swing enormously. Across 253 recorded auction lots of Shelley teaware, prices run from $23 at the bottom to over $4,600 at the top. That is the range within one maker. Here is a real example of how wrong people get it. A part breakfast set in pink and white dainty was catalogued by an auction house with an estimate of 30 to 40 pounds. The professionals valued it at 40 pounds. It sold for 750, nearly 20 times the estimate, because 2 Shelley collectors in the room recognized the pattern and the auctioneer did not. Look for the pattern numbers. 13591 is Blue Rock. 13977 is Wild Anemone. 14036 is Rambler Rose. 13822 is Lily of the Valley. The number is printed on the base, and it is the single most useful piece of information on any Shelley cup. Number 11, Shelley again, but now the Art Deco shapes. Same factory, completely different world. In the early 1930s, Shelley produced a run of geometric shapes called Vogue, Mode, Eve, and Regent. Solid triangular handles with no hole to put your finger through. Conical bodies that sit on the saucer like an upside-down pyramid. Bold blocks of color instead of flowers. They are extraordinary, and they failed commercially. Vogue and Mode were on the market for roughly 2 years, from 1930 to 1933, and customers did not buy them, partly because that triangular handle is genuinely awkward to hold. Production stopped, and that commercial failure is exactly why survivors are now scarce, and a good Art Deco Shelley trio brings $400 to $1,200. That is a pattern worth understanding, and it applies far beyond Shelley. The things that sold badly at the time are the things that are rare now. Number 10, Royal Crown Derby Imari. Cobalt blue, iron red, and heavy gold in dense interlocking panels. Pattern 1128 is the one collector's chase, and a good cup and saucer sits between $400 and $1,000. But there is a serious complication with Derby that you have to get right, because Derby still makes Imari today, and the modern pieces look almost identical to the antique ones. The separator is the date cipher. Underneath the crown mark, Derby printed a small coded symbol that changes every year. Pre-1940 ciphers carry a very strong premium. Later ones do not. If you own Derby Imari and you have never looked for that cipher, you genuinely do not know whether you are holding a $200 cup or a $900 one. Quick thing before we go on, because from here the numbers start climbing hard. If you are finding this useful, subscribe. Next week I am doing depression glass, which is the one where people routinely throw away four-figure pieces because they think it is cheap green glass. You will want that one. Number 9. Late Victorian Royal Doulton. Forget everything you associate with the Royal Doulton name. Forget the character jugs, forget the figurines, forget the 1980s dinner services. In the 1880s and 1890s, Doulton ran a serious art department, and the work coming out of it was as fine as anything made in England. The pieces to look for carry raised gilding, which means the gold was applied as a paste that dries standing proud of the surface, so it catches light in a way flat gold never does, and it is usually combined with colored enamel dots. A cup of exactly this type, dated to around 1890 and in flawless condition, sold for close to $700. Look for Burslem or Lambeth in the mark and run your finger over the gold. If you can feel it, that is raised gilding, and that changes the conversation entirely. Number 8. Meissen 2 crossed swords in blue under the glaze. That is the oldest trademark in European porcelain, in continuous use since 1720. And it is also the most copied mark in the history of ceramics, so we need to be careful here. Genuine Meissen is hard-paste porcelain from Saxony, and the 18th century hand-painted pieces are museum-grade objects. An 18th century Meissen hand-painted teacup sold at auction for $810, and the dot period pieces, made between 1763 and 1774 and identifiable by a small dot painted between the sword hilts, run considerably higher again. Here is the test that separates real from fake, and it is easy. On genuine Meissen, the swords are painted underneath the glaze. Run your finger across them, and you should feel nothing at all, just smooth glaze. On the great majority of copies, the mark sits on top of the glaze, and you can feel the edge of it. Number 7. Royal Worcester fruit painted cups. And this is where signatures start to matter enormously. These are not tableware. These are cabinet pieces, individually hand-painted by named artists who signed their own work directly into the painting, and the name of the artist can multiply the price several times over. The names to look for are Harry Stinton, John Stinton, and James Stinton, who painted Highland cattle and pheasants, Horace Price, Frank Roberts, Harry Ayrton, Edward Townsend, Albert Shuck, William Ricketts, and E. Lockyer, who painted fruit. To give you a sense of what these names are worth, a hand-painted fruit potpourri vase by Ayrton sold for £2,300, and a signed fruit cabinet plate by the same artist brought $820. Cups sit below plates and vases, but the same artist premium applies, and a properly signed fruit cup and saucer is realistically an $800 to $2,500 object. So here is the critical instruction. The signature is not in the back stamp, it is painted into the decoration itself, usually along the bottom edge of the fruit or the landscape, in tiny script, in the same color as the paint around it. You have to actually look for it. Most people have never once examined the painting on a cup closely enough to find a signature, and that single oversight is the difference between a $40 cup and a $2,000 cup. Number 6. Paragon Double Warrant. Paragon made English bone china from the early 1900s until the 1990s, and their heavily gilded rose cups are among the most desirable English cups on the market. One with a heavy gold coating and a prominent rose design sold for $2,400 at auction. But the value is not really in the roses. It is in the warrants. A royal warrant is an official appointment to supply the royal household, and it gets printed into the back stamp. For a period, Paragon held two of them simultaneously, from Queen Mary and from Queen Elizabeth, and pieces from those years carry both warrants side by side on the base. Collectors call it the double warrant period, and it corresponds almost exactly to the years when Paragon's quality was at its peak. Two warrants, strong money. One warrant, materially less. Same roses, same gold, same shape. It is entirely a question of what is printed on the bottom. Number 5. Aynsley cabinet cups with a painter's signature. We are back to Aynsley, and now we are getting closer to answering the question I left open at number 19. Aynsley's best painters signed their work exactly the way Royal Worcester's did, and hardly any owner has ever looked for it. What you want is a cup with a painted panel, a gilt-encrusted ground in cobalt or claret, heavy raised gold, and a signature tucked inside the painted panel itself. Cups of that description sit between $1,200 and $3,000. Now remember number 19. That was Aynsley Orchard Fruit at $50 to $75. Number 4, Sèvres and cups that came with lids. Most people do not know that teacups ever had lids, but the French made them that way, and a Sèvres gobelet with its original cover is one of the most beautiful objects in this entire category. Cobalt blue ground, a hand-painted figural reserve showing a couple in a garden, raised gold gilt over the whole surface, and a lid with matching gilt work. These run from $1,500 to $4,000, and I need to be straight with you about why the range is that wide. Genuine 18th century Sèvres from the royal factory is genuinely rare, and most of what surfaces at auction is 19th century Sèvres. Style work produced by Paris decorating studios using the same marks. Both are collectible. They are not worth the same. The mark to look for is an interlaced double L with a date letter inside it. But that mark was also widely imitated, so a piece at the top of this range needs a proper opinion rather than a video. Number 3, Royal Vienna portrait cups. These are the ones that look like they are made of solid gold, deep red or cobalt saucer, gold scrollwork covering nearly the entire surface, and a hand-painted portrait panel on the body of the cup, usually a woman in classical dress, signed by the artist. They bring $2,000 to $4,500. The mark is a beehive, painted in underglaze blue, and it looks like a shield with horizontal bars. And here is the honest complication. The original Vienna factory closed in 1864, and after it closed, a large number of German and Bohemian decorating studios simply adopted the beehive mark and kept using it. So Royal Vienna today describes a style rather than a single factory. Genuine Vienna period pieces are at the top of that range. The later Bohemian work is still highly collectible and still worth serious money, but you should know which one you have. Number 2, and now I can tell you what I have been holding back since number 19. This is the cup from the opening. Aynsley Orchard Fruit, $4,999. The same maker and the same pattern family as the $50 cup at number 19. The differences are these. It is signed by the painter. In the fruit, the ground is gilt-encrusted rather than plain. It is cabinet quality, meaning it was made to be displayed and never used. It is complete with its original saucer, and critically, the gold has no wear at all because nobody ever drank from it. 5 things. That is the entire gap between $50 and $5,000. Not a different factory, not a different century, not a rarer pattern. 5 details, 4 of which you can check yourself in under a minute, sitting on a cup that looks completely ordinary from 3 feet away. That is why I keep telling you to turn them over. And number 1, Wedgwood Fairyland Luster. If you have one of these, you will know the moment you see it described, because there is nothing else like it. Iridescent luster glaze in deep blues, oranges and purples, and painted onto it fairies, imps, goblins, dragons, bridges over impossible rivers, elves boxing on tree branches, floating lanterns in dark woods. It looks like a book illustration wrapped around porcelain. It was designed by Daisy Making Jones, one of the very few women working as a senior designer at a major English pottery, produced from around 1916, and discontinued in 1941, when Wedgwood decided it no longer fitted the company. It is now the most collected English ceramic line of the 20th century. I want to be precise with the numbers here, because I have seen other videos get this badly wrong. Fairyland luster pieces typically bring $4,000 to $6,000 at auction, with unusual shapes and patterns reaching $7,000 to $9,000. In March of 2025, 2 Fairyland vases sold in a single Kansas auction for a combined $130,500, with a Dragon King vase taking $87,500 on its own. Those 5-figure numbers are vases, not cups. I am not going to tell you a teacup is worth $80,000, because it is not. The cup-form Fairyland pieces, the Melba cups and the can cups, sit in the low to middle 4 figures. That is still, comfortably, the most valuable teacup on this list. What identifies it is the printed Portland vase mark, which looks like a small urn, together with a painted number beginning with the letter Z, Z4968, Z5294, Z5360. If you find a Z number on the base of anything Wedgwood, stop what you are doing and look it up before it goes anywhere near a charity shop. So that is the 20. The 3 at the top were Wedgwood Fairyland Luster, the Aynsley at $4,999, and the Royal Vienna Portrait Cups. But honestly, the ones I would actually go and check tonight are the easy ones. Turn over anything Japanese and look for the word occupied. Look for a date cipher on any derby. And on absolutely anything hand-painted, get right up close to the fruit or the landscape and look for a signature, because that one habit is worth more than everything else in this video combined. 6 things to remember on anything you find. A complete trio beats a lone cup by 2 to 3 times. Worn gold is the single biggest silent value killer there is. A painter's signature lives in the decoration, not the backstamp. An earlier backstamp almost always beats a later one. Decoration on the inside of the cup means a higher production tier. And hold it up to a window, because a hairline crack takes 60 to 80% off the price, and you will not see it under a lamp. Tell me in the comments which number you own. I answer all of them. And next week we are doing depression glass, where the throwing away problem is even worse than it is with China. So subscribe and I will see you there.